Hello, this is Dave Siegel. Welcome to another edition of Legal Action, where we talk about different aspects of the law and how they might affect you. Today we're going to be talking about personal injury, something that usually affects somebody at some point in their life or somebody that we know. And today I have with me attorney Jesse Barrientos from DuPage County as well as Cook County, correct?
Good evening, Dave. That's right.
Good to see you again, Jesse.
You too.
We're going to talk about personal injury.
Yeah, I think probably the most helpful way would be just to kind of talk about the genesis of a personal injury of an automobile accident case.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. We can run through the process. So obviously it starts with a bang, correct?
It starts with a bang, or sometimes maybe a whimper.
Maybe a whimper.
Yeah, you get into that auto accident. A lot of auto accidents, would take for example just one from a rear ender, where you get hit from behind. Now, what do? What's the first thing that happens? Okay, so you get hit. All right, then I think the most important thing is, hey, to make sure that you're okay and the rest of the occupants in your car are okay as well.
That's correct.
Then I think you have an obligation to check on the other occupants of the car that maybe hit you. And, you want to refrain. You don't want to. I mean, you might be upset, especially if it's your new Mercedes, right, or your new Infiniti or Cadillac, right? But these things happen. There's nothing to really get that upset about. You don't want to swear or curse at the other person or anything. You want to make sure that generally that they're okay.
Well, if somebody cuts you off and they're on their cell phone, it might not be so easy to say, hey, are you okay here? But I understand your point. You want to make sure everybody's okay before you do anything else.
Right, exactly. And it might not be so easy, especially, sometimes people put up their makeup on while they're driving and shave, too. I've seen people do that. But, again, things happen and you need to deal with it, more kind of adult-like. And so you want to also, if the other person or somebody in your car is injured, you want to make sure that you render assistance. You want to make sure that if that's necessary, that's required, somebody's really hurt, that you call an ambulance. And, of course, you have to call the police as well.
Right. So call 911. Make sure if anybody's hurt, make sure everybody's attended to.
Exactly. If you need immediate assistance, then you really need to do that and take care of that right away.
Okay. And then get on to the business after that of exchanging personal information. Is that correct?
Exchange personal information. A lot of times, what you want to do is to make sure you get off, to the side so that you're in a safe place. It's dependent upon where the accident may happen, and then what you're going to deal with is what happens now when the police come. Right.
Right.
And what do? You talk, of course, very respectful and answer the officer's questions. Never admit guilt. Just explain kind of what happened, your version. Don't say it's, oh, your fault, or, oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry. Hey, you might be sorry, and that's fine, but just don't admit guilt when you give the information to the police, because he's writing this stuff down, and that, most likely.
He's doing his report based on the information he receives from each driver, because obviously he didn't witness it unless he was traveling right behind them. So it's pretty much a hearsay report, is it not?
It is, but it's based upon the parties that are involved. And, the report may come into play later on, depending, when you get with the insurance company through all of the stages that you go through, really. The next kind of thing, I think, what would you think would be the next step? Now, after you've got the accident and everything, who do you have a duty to report it to?
Well, your insurance company, for one.
That's right. And, it's important that you do that because it's in your contract for your policy for insurance. But it may be a wise thing also to seek legal advice. I don't think that you should give a statement to even your own insurance company, let alone anybody else's insurance company, in terms of what happened without seeking that legal advice first.
Right. Now, isn't there an information sheet that the individual involved in the accident is supposed to submit to the Secretary of State as well?
There is a sheet, and it depends. You have to turn in, I believe, if it's with respect to property damage, it's in excess of $500. And essentially, it's your version of what happened. And there's a little diagram on the back where you can kind of draw what happened, car A, car B, and little place for you to explain.
But you must do it to keep your license in good standing.
You have to do it in terms of they want to make sure that you have insurance as well. It's required, and it has all that other information in there as well. So it's really your version of kind of what happened. That's not the actual report. That's just the information that you give to the the Secretary of State. A lot of people think that that sheet that they get from the police officer is a police report, and it's not.
It's not.
It's
It's an informational report.
It's an information exchange too.
Well, let's say you get the ticket. You get cited.
Sure.
You were following too close behind, and you rear-ended another vehicle. What is likely going to happen with that citation to you?
Well, you get a citation, and okay, it's a bummer, but I guess that you got a citation. You have to go to court. Now, it's probably going to be in a required appearance. And even sometimes, even just citations generally, when people get citations, and if you have a good driving record and you haven't had a ticket in years, you can check it off and probably get supervision and pay it. But if not, my suggestion is always to really retain an attorney and to go in on it.
Okay, now this is a traffic court matter held in the local courthouse?
It'll be a traffic court matter, exactly. But what will happen is you get your citation and you get your date to appear. And again, you should go with counsel, with an attorney. And you go over there, and there are so many things that can happen. One, the other side, okay, the person that you hit, in your example, may not appear, may not show up. And since the police officer didn't witness the accident, he's just issued the ticket based upon the information that he obtained from really both you and from the other driver. If the complainant, the person whose car you hit, doesn't show up, then more than likely the case is going to be dismissed.
How does what happens in traffic court affect the underlying personal injury case that's dealt with the insurance company?
If there is a case, or even if you're just going to, it's eventually going to be resolved, either way you look at it, if you plead guilty to, say, for example, following too closely to avoid an accident, or a failure to yield, or any number of other citations, then what you're saying is, yeah, I'm guilty. I was following too closely. I should have yielded the right of way to the other person, but I didn't. And that's not what you want, because that's really an admission. A lot of times, what we'll do is to ask for really to plead not guilty, and then there's a finding of guilty. Essentially, you're still found guilty for the citation for the offense, but you didn't plead guilty. You didn't admit that is something you did. It's a finding by a judicial body.
Okay. Well, one way or another, the traffic court matter gets resolved. You either walk clean, you plead guilty, you're found guilty, you get supervision, you pay a fine. Ultimately, something happens, and that issue is disposed of. And then, where does it go from here? The medical treatment, is that where we?
Well, I mean, it depends too. I mean, we can kind of step back and go back to the accident, and I really believe that even if you don't feel sore, you should seek the assistance of a medical professional, because you want to make sure that you're okay. That's the main concern. You want to make sure that you're okay. You want to make sure that anybody in your car is okay. If you had any minor children or small kids in your car, you want to make sure that they're okay. And a lot of times, one of the bigger kinds of injuries are soft tissue injuries. That is really an injury to the muscles, the ligaments, to your nerves, to a disc inflammation.
So soft tissue would not be a fracture, a dislocation, or anything like that. You're talking about something that's not not readily diagnosed on an X-ray, correct?
Right, exactly, and that's something that doesn't show up in soft tissue. So most of the common kind of soft tissue injuries are whiplash. Now, when you get hit, if you think about it, and you take your head, your chin, if you move your head forward, okay, your chest and your chin kind of stops your head from moving, right? But when you get hit from behind, your head kind of goes back. Now, if you just take your head here and you move it backwards and you go this far, okay, that's the normal amount of flexation that you can move your head. When you get hit, it gets hyperextended essentially. Sometimes it takes several days for the soreness and the stiffness to set in. So it's not uncommon for somebody to feel okay after the accident, and then later on that evening or the next day or so really start to feel stiff, and then be concerned about it. The best course is to go seek medical attention just to make sure that everything is okay.
And where should they do that?
Well, the emergency room is a great place, or if you have a family physician, if you have a chiropractor? And just kind of on the side with respect to those kinds of things, I found personally chiropractic treatment is very helpful. There are a lot of people in insurance companies, in fact, really don't give a whole lot of weight to chiropractic treatment. They just think that it's just kind of padding the bill and everything else. And there are several kinds of treatments that you get.
Sure.
For example, massage, manipulation, which is putting the spine back and bones back into joint, into alignment. There is hot and cold packs and electrostimulation.
Right. Well, I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but there are some issues with injuries that are not easily diagnosed just with the eye. For example, the ones you're talking about, it's soft tissue. It's not showing up on an x-ray. You're not going to necessarily an MD, you're going to a chiropractor. The chiropractor is offering massage and heat therapy and things like that. This is a distinguishable case from someone who has a severe fracture, a hospitalization visit, or overnight visit rather, or some kind of treatment. So there is a big distinction on how those cases are handled by the insurance companies.
There is a difference, exactly. I mean, soft tissue and hard tissue would be the fracture or would be the break.
The ones you're describing are actually the hardest ones to seek a recovery for and really get made whole, would you say?
I have found that, especially the past several years, that has really been the case. There's a myth, too. The myth is that the damages, the physical damages to a person is really only significant if it's a high-impact crash. But the truth is that a lot of damage is done to an individual in low-impact crashes. Crashes maybe from, 8 to 12 miles per hour, where there's not even any damage to the vehicle.
Right. A lot of the insurance companies like to correlate the damage to the vehicle with the injury to the inside of the vehicle, and that's just not true. I had a case recently where my client was instructed to go out and get an estimate because the photographs of the vehicle did not show significant damage. However, my client was in fact injured in that auto accident, even though there wasn't a significant dollar amount of damage to the vehicle. So how do you deal with that?
Well, really the best way you can. I mean, part of going through the genesis here of personal injury cases to try to resolve it. You need to try to resolve it because litigation is expensive. I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But the insurance company has the purse strings. Okay, what happens? What kind of damages do you have? What would you say? You'd have medical damages, right, from any treatment that you saw, right? What kind of goes along with that?
You're going to have some lost wages, possibly.
Lost wages. I mean, there's going to be perhaps prescription medication, even, right?
Sure.
To go along with that.
Follow-up visits.
Follow-up visits. There's going to be, like I said, lost wages. There's also going to be maybe the property damage.
Certainly the property damage.
Right? And then there's going to be the pain and suffering. And again, the problem sometimes...
That's what's hard to put a dollar value on,
That's
correct?
what's hard to put a dollar value on, and especially in the soft tissue cases where it's more subjective because how do I know that your back really hurts? You could tell me right now, oh, my back, and you can complain about it, and I can treat you, and we can do all this stuff on there, but I'm going off of what you're telling me, really.
Yeah, I think the insurance company will look at all the facts surrounding the case. What did the vehicle look like? What was the source of the impact? Was it high impact, low impact? What kind of treatment did that individual undergo? Was there a gap in treatment? Did they go 3 weeks after the accident when someone got in their ear and said, hey, you should sue this person?
Right.
How much time was off of work? If this person had no time off of work, then maybe they're trumping something up on the medical side. You know what I mean? So there's a total package that the insurance company will look at to evaluate whether there's a case that they should settle. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair to say. But the problem with that is it depends on what kind of a job you have and what you do. A lot of people go to work sick, for example. Now, you hear stories about people who, they've had perfect attendance for the past 20 years, and God bless them. But, people go to work that way. And if you're hurting, hey, guess what? You need the money. You need to pay your rent,
right,
or to pay your mortgage, or to buy food for your family. So people do sometimes what they need to do, and it's right.
But if a guy works at UPS unloading trucks, it's going to be pretty hard for him to convince anybody that he was severely hurt when he didn't miss a day of work and continued to lift those boxes.
It sure
correct?
is. That's right, especially in a job like that. So it kind of depends. In terms of waiting to go and to seek treatment, even sometimes a couple of days or a week is a problem for the insurance companies. They look at that. I mean, in all fairness, you could see that and say, hey, listen, okay, it took you that long. There must be a problem there. But again, there are all kinds of explanations. Perhaps it didn't start hurting you to a couple of days or anything. What happens if, and I've had this with a couple of cases, you're getting ready to go on vacation. Tickets are paid for, everything. What do? Okay, you get hit, and you're supposed to take off the next day, and so
if you physically can't go,
that's different. But again, talking about soft tissue injury, so maybe you
struggle through your vacation
where you're going, and that's true too. Some people have done that as well.
Well, let's say you finish treatment, whether it be for 2 weeks or 2 months, whatever it takes to get a discharge from a doctor that you are now okay to discontinue treatment and resume your regular activities to the best of your ability. What is the next thing a client of yours would need to do?
Well, actually, before we get to that, I just want to mention, we talked about the follow-up treatment. It's very important when you present and you tell the medical providers what the problem is. Now understand, they're writing that down into your report. So anything that you tell them, chances are that's going to your report. Chances are later on in the litigation, or even if it's just through the negotiation stage, the insurance company is going to be able to see exactly what you said.
Right. Well, hopefully all you've done is tell the truth about what your symptoms are, what you're feeling,
right,
and how things happen, and you're not engaging in any kind of fraud, because that just is not something we would ever be a part of.
Right. You have an obligation to tell the truth. So it's very important. But just by the way, that's what everything is getting taken down. But to get to your question, after all that and everything is done, and now you're wanting to try to resolve the lawsuit.
How do you do that?
Before it's a lawsuit. And again,
it's just a claim at this point,
It's just a claim at this point. And the best thing, again, I really, really recommend getting a competent attorney to be able to negotiate the claim with the insurance company.
Can't they do it themselves?
They can do it themselves. The problem is that most people aren't aware of their rights. They don't know, for example, when the insurance company asks to take your statement, even that's why I said earlier that you should even get advice of an attorney before you even do that. One wrong word, and what I mean to say by that is if it's phrased differently, you can tell the truth, obviously, but if it's phrased differently, they're looking for anything, I think, really, to be able to deny that claim or to say that you contributed to the negligent conduct of the other person.
Right. Actually, when it comes to giving statements, that applies to all facets of the law. Have counsel with you before or during you give a statement, or don't give it at all.
Right. I'm a firm believer in that. Absolutely. But so you've retained your attorney, and so what he's going to do is he's going to gather all of your medical bills. He's going to probably have you make a list of every place that you've been. He's going to have you sign a contract. Going to have you...
what kind of contract? Let's talk about that, because that's important.
Generally, it's a contingency fee contract.
Okay. Contingency fee means what exactly?
Means that the payment to the attorney is contingent upon the recovery. And so that means, for example, say you come to my office and we do a contingency fee contract. That means the only time that I get paid is if there's a recovery. However, and certainly in my contracts, and I think in a lot of other people's contracts, other attorneys' contracts, you're responsible for the costs and for those expenses, regardless of what happens. And I always explain that to make sure that my clients are aware of that completely. And sometimes you see commercials on television that says, well, there's no recovery, no payment to the attorney if there's no recovery. And that's true, but I think you have to go a little bit further and say, hey, listen, there's expenses involved, and hey, litigation can be expensive, and the costs are going to be the client's responsibility. So really, that's all they're going to be on the hook for.
What's a standard contingency fee agreement in terms of percentages that the attorney's going to recover? Standard,
it can be anywhere from 25% to 33 1/3% if it settles. And then once a lawsuit or administrative action of any kind is filed, it can go up to 40% or so.
Because of the amount of work that has to be done on a case and the time frame and all that?
And there is an incredible amount of work. It doesn't matter if it is a soft tissue injury case or if it's a hard tissue injury case, like a fracture, you still have to go through the same hoops and you still have to do the same work. And so it is a tremendous investment of time.
Okay, so you've got a contract, you represent the client, you're gathering their information,
right,
which is also referred to as a specials package. Is that correct?
It could be a specials package, exactly.
What does that contain, the specials package?
The specials package is going to contain, and just one thing, just digressing just for a second, also going to need an authorization from you, which authorizes me to be able to get your medical records, because of the HIPAA laws prohibit medical providers from disclosing any information to other people unless there is a release by you for that information. So
I probably also want to let you receive my lost wage information from my employer.
All of that. And a
general waiver of information regarding the entire case.
The release of information, right. And generally that usually goes for either 2 years or until it's revoked in writing, except to the extent that it's relied upon by the medical providers producing that information. So what we're going to look at, we're going to make a list of everything. We're going to look at all of your medical bills. And not just the medical bills, we're going to look at the reports.
You want to see what's in there?
We want to see the reports. We're going to get all that together for every doctor, every provider you've been through, the hospital if you went to the hospital, to your personal physician, to the chiropractor, to the orthopod, to whomever you've been. Maybe you had an MRI done. And so we're also going to get that report as well, and the image too.
This sounds like quite an undertaking, a lot of work.
It is, and sometimes, well, no, not sometimes, most all of the time, there's a charge to secure those records. So each time I send off to a different place to provide medical services to you, they're going to charge me a fee to produce that and to send that to me. And those are also part of the expense as well.
Will you advance those expenses at least initially or no?
Pretty much. Most of the time we will. And then we get all this information as well as the wages, the lost wages and everything else, and we put together, you mentioned before, specials package, which includes kind of all of that hard information that we talked about, and then maybe a summary sheet reflecting who the provider was, the address, phone number, the account number, dates of service, the balance due or the amount charged, and then we have a tally that shows how much all of the medical bills add up to. Then we have another section for the lost wages and for property damage, prescription, all that stuff. Add that up, and then we have a grand total. But you want more than your grand total, because what are we missing?
Pain and suffering.
Pain and suffering, exactly, which is very subjective. I mean, how do you compensate somebody for the pain and suffering that they've experienced as a result of this accident?
Well, I think that's very important. That's what the viewers will want to know. What is a likely... What do you do with a specials package once you see there's, let's say, for example, $5,000 worth of medical treatment and $1,000 worth of lost wages? So we have a $6,000 total on the bottom there that you're talking about. How do you put a value on what you're going to actually seek for damages?
Well, generally, and this is maybe old rule of thumb, that what we normally do is, kind of multiply it times 3. So if you have $5,000 in medical specials, generally you figure it's maybe $15,000. Okay? Roughly. Now we add in the property damage and the other stuff. So 20. I always err on the higher side because the insurance company is always going to come back with a lower figure. In fact, the number that I seem to get on even in those cases is $3,000. Okay? And that just seems to be the number. They even come back lower than what the actual medical expenses are.
Okay. Are they hoping that you go back and talk to the provider and see if they'll take a little bit less? Is that their goal here, or why are they coming up with that number on a soft tissue injury case?
If it's soft tissue, and that is the amount of the injury, I mean, again, they hold the purse string, so that's going to be what it is. You can always negotiate with the medical provider, but okay, in order to pay your attorney, some people think that they're going to get rich off of a personal injury case, and I mean, suppose that really depends upon your injury.
Yeah.
But for a case where you have $5,000 in medical specials, probably not.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of people feel that when they get hit in an accident, they've somehow won the lottery, and nothing could be farther from the truth. They haven't won the lottery at all. In fact, they're in for a big headache more likely than not. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, because now you're injured. You might, if it's a back injury, you might have an injury that is going to be around with you for a long time to come, and for the little bit of money that you're going to get, it's just, hey, it would have been better to avoid the accident in the first place. Of course,
your Mercedes, which is damaged, is never going to be the same even when they repair it and try and match the paint.
No, that's true. You're going to have to go get a new one.
Right. So you sent out this package to the insurance company.
Right.
Let's try and wrap this up to a conclusion here. You are trying to negotiate a settlement, get it resolved, get your client paid, get the medical providers paid, get your fee paid, and close it. Is that correct?
Exactly. And then when you get that certain amount of money where you have to be, and maybe you can negotiate a little bit, then what you do, the attorney's fees comes off the top, and then you negotiate the others down, and then the client is left with what's left.
Okay. Now the client has the ultimate say.
Absolutely.
On whether to accept the offer from the insurance company.
But real quick, the difficulty is the expenses that are involved. And we don't have time to talk about it tonight, but in terms of the deposition and the medical expenses, or the expenses that you have to pay to get the doctors in to testify or to even take their statement, sometimes the doctors charge between $300 to $600 an hour to do that, payment in advance. So there are court reporter fees and transcript fees and everything else. And
are most cases likely to settle before you have to even file a suit?
Most cases are likely to settle before, and that's true. And then once you get into court and you file a suit and you go through the process, generally those cases tend to settle before you go to trial or arbitration.
But they don't settle early in the litigation process. They typically settle real close to a trial date. Or on a trial date, correct?
That's true too, and certainly after you've done all of the discovery, which we'll probably talk about on another show, after you've done all of that work, and it's not uncommon to expend in excess of 100 hours.
But basically the delay in paying or settling the case benefits the insurance company because they're holding onto the purse strings like you mentioned before, and they want to hold it as long as they can until they have to compensate that individual that was hurt by their insured.
Sure it does, and even if you think about it this way, if we know we have to pay you and we wait and we hold on to it and pay it at the last minute, we've gained the interest on whatever it is we're going to pay you, even if you look at it in that limited kind of scope.
That's very true. Well, we've covered a lot of things for an injury case, personal injury, before it actually gets to a lawsuit. There's a whole lot more that we can't get into.
Yeah, wish we had more time.
Let's suffice to say that you have an accident, you have damages, you have medical treatment, you try and resolve the case. And if you can't resolve it, you have to think about filing a suit and getting what's rightfully yours if they won't negotiate in good faith.
That's right. And also importantly, if you take anything away from this, I think one of the most important things is to seek legal advice from a competent attorney who does personal injury.
It's great advice. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on Legal Action. Take care.